Good morning. We're going to be reading from Story of the World today about Julius Caesar. So, Story of the World is a really interesting retelling of some of the history that we learn in our history books, but adding extra detail, and it's interesting to hear two different interpretations of things that have happened, recently or longer ago in history, because people recall different facts, and there might be even not just extra details sometimes, but different information, because especially for these stories that are happening over 2,000 years ago, there could be information that has just changed over time, and so different interpretations are out there. So we're going to first hear about Caesar crossing the Rubicon, then a different retelling of the Cleopatra story when Caesar and Cleopatra fell in love, and also the story of Caesar's death, his assassination. So let's begin reading. Caesar's victories made him a hero to the people of Rome. And maybe another time we'll get into the story of the world telling of his victories, which tie into our story of the Vikings that we're going to be hearing about in history. But the senators were afraid of Caesar. If he comes back to Rome now, the senators said to each other, the people will want him to be king of Rome. And then what will happen to us? We won't be able to run Rome anymore. Two of the senators decided that they would try to make one of the other consuls, Pompey, turn against Caesar. This is hard to do because Pompey had married Caesar's daughter. But Pompey was jealous of Caesar. He knew that Caesar was much more popular than he was. So Pompey agreed to listen to the senators. Listen, they said to him, tell the people of Rome that Caesar is a traitor, which means he goes against his country. Tell them he is not loyal to Rome. Take away Caesar's position of consul before he gets back to Rome. Then you will be the strongest man in the whole city. They're saying this to Pompey. So Pompey agreed. He sent a message to Caesar telling him that he would be arrested when he returned to Rome. We know this already. He told Caesar to give up command of his army, and all the people of Rome were told that Caesar was a traitor. Far away in Britain, Caesar got the bad news. His own city was calling him a criminal and a traitor. And the Senate wanted to arrest him and put him on trial. What shall he do? You know what he does. Caesar knew that the Senate didn't like him, but he was convinced that the Roman people still thought of him as a great hero. So he took his army and marched back towards Rome. Soon Caesar came to the famous river. What is it? The Rubicon. But the Rubicon was the border of Roman land. Caesar knew that as soon as he crossed over the Rubicon, he would be in the land controlled by the senators. The senators would try to arrest him, and he would have to fight them. His army would end up fighting against other Romans. If he crossed over the Rubicon, he would start a civil war, a war that a country fights against itself, against other people within the country. Now, should he do it? He stood at the river for a long time, staring at the bridge. So the story says. Even yet, he said to the captain of his army, we may turn back. But once we cross that little bridge, we will have to settle this with our swords. Finally, Caesar drew his sword and stepped onto the bridge. My enemies have forced me to do this, he announced. We will march into Rome. Let the die be cast. He crossed the Rubicon on January 10th, 49 BC. His army followed him towards Rome. Back in Rome, Pompey and the senators were trying to raise an army of their own. No one wanted to fight against Caesar's soldiers. Can you blame them? After all, Caesar's army had spent years fighting in foreign countries. They were tough, strong, and loyal to their leader. When Caesar and his army came inside of Rome, all of Pompey's soldiers ran away. And before Caesar could enter the city, Pompey fled as well. Caesar marched triumphantly into Rome. No one dared to arrest him. Now, the Senate had to admit that Caesar was too powerful to drive away. Caesar wasn't king yet, but he was the strongest man in Rome. Today, when someone has to make an important decision, people still say, "You're about to cross the Rubicon." Crossing the Rubicon means that you're about to do something that you cannot undo. We get this expression from the story of Julius Caesar's return to Rome. All right, so that is crossing the Rubicon. Let's hear a little about new telling of Caesar and Cleopatra. Now, Caesar ruled all of Rome and all of Rome's territories. The army obeyed him. People loved him. And the Senate couldn't drive him out. But Caesar still wanted to get rid of Pompey. He knew that Pompey had run away to, do you remember? Egypt. And down in Egypt, Pompey was trying to convince the Egyptians to help him attack Caesar and take Rome back. I can't leave him down there, Caesar thought to himself. He'll come marching back up here with a whole army of Egyptians and attack me again. As long as Pompey is free, this civil war will never end. I'll have to go down to Egypt and arrest Pompey and put him in jail before I can have any peace. So he started down to Egypt. But the Egyptians were having troubles of their own. They had two pharaohs. There was the queen, Cleopatra, and her brother. Cleopatra and her brother were supposed to rule Egypt together. But they didn't get along with each other. They fought constantly because each one wanted to rule Egypt alone. But when Cleopatra and her brother heard that Caesar was coming, they stopped quarreling with each other. They were terrified. The whole world had heard of Caesar. The Egyptians were sure that Caesar was coming to conquer them. "What will we do?" Caesar and her brother asked each other. "We've got to make friends with him quickly, or else he will attack us with his invincible army." It's a good call. Befriend him. "I know," Cleopatra's brother exclaimed suddenly. "Caesar's old enemy, Pompey, is living in Egypt. Let's arrest him and send him to Caesar as a prisoner. Then Caesar will know that we want to be his allies." Allies are especially two countries working together, is the way we'll hear about it mainly in history. "I have a better idea," Cleopatra answered. "So not just a prisoner," this is what she thinks. "Let's cut off his head and send that to Caesar instead." Cleopatra? So that was her idea to kill Pompey. Cut his head off and send it to Caesar? So that is exactly what they did. Caesar was startled to get Pompey's head in a bag. Can you imagine what that would feel like? And he was really sad too. He and Pompey had once been friends. They had been consuls together for years. And Pompey had been his son-in-law. He hadn't intended to kill Pompey. He just wanted to put him in prison where he couldn't cause any more trouble. Caesar marched the rest of the way to the Egyptian palace, intending to tell the pharaohs of Egypt how unhappy he was. Meanwhile, though, Cleopatra had an idea. "If I can get Caesar to like me," she thought, "maybe he will help me get rid of my brother. Then I will be the only pharaoh in Egypt." So she arranged to meet Caesar all alone. She put on her prettiest clothes and surrounded herself with the beautiful treasures of Egypt: gold, spices, monkeys, and jewelry. When Caesar was shown into Cleopatra's room, he was dazzled by her beauty and by all of the riches around her. "Caesar," Cleopatra said sweetly, "if you'll just help me get rid of my brother so that I can rule Egypt all by myself, I will share Egypt's riches with you." Caesar was overcome by Cleopatra. He fell madly in love with her and agreed to do everything she said. He told his army to fight against the Egyptians who were loyal to Cleopatra's brother. The Roman soldiers did as they were told. Cleopatra's brother was killed in the battle, and Cleopatra became the sole ruler of Egypt. It was time for Caesar to go back to Rome, but he delayed. He didn't want to leave Cleopatra. Instead, he stayed in Egypt, keeping his new love company. But the senators back in Rome still wanted to get rid of Caesar. "This is our last chance," they said to each other. "Let's raise an army of Romans who are loyal to the Senate and try to defeat Caesar one last time." So they gathered together an army and marched down towards Egypt, ready to attack Caesar. Caesar hadn't forgotten how to fight, though. He got his own soldiers together and defeated the Senate army in record time. Caesar was known for his fast victories. In fact, after one victory, when a friend asked him to describe the battle, he answered, "I can do it in 3 words." Do you know what they are? 3 Latin words. Vini, vidi, vici is what it is. Actually, in the true Latin pronunciation of it, it's vini, vidi, vici, which doesn't sound as conquering. But it means, I came, I saw, I conquered. So, few differences in this story of Cleopatra and Caesar. I like this one better. Definitely seems to have a little more detail about Cleopatra's whole plan in it, which I like. Now, Caesar and Cleopatra, stepping away from them for a little bit, you are going to see Cleopatra come up again in the next part of our history book. But now, let's see what happens to Caesar. Caesar finally left Egypt and came back to Rome. No one could fight against him anymore, and the people loved him. So when he came back to Rome, Caesar was made dictator for life. How long is a dictator supposed to be in charge? Just 6 months. So now he's dictator for life. That's how happy everyone was with him. A dictator can do whatever he wants. And once Caesar was dictator, he took power away from the Senate. Now only Caesar could declare war, pass laws, and raise taxes. He started to make money with his own picture on it. He paid for gladiator fighting and chariot racing to amuse the people of Rome. Everything seemed to be going his way. Is it going to last for long? We know what happens to Julius Caesar. But then Caesar did 2 things that made the people angry. First, he called the Senate together. "I am the dictator of Rome," he told them. "But the kings of other countries will respect me more if you call me King Caesar. So from now on, I want you to call me King. Second, I want my nephew, Octavian," we're going to hear a lot more about him, "to be king after me. I'm going to adopt him to be my son. I want him to inherit my power too." This is not the way Rome is supposed to be established. There are some countries where the throne is inherited. It gets passed down from generation to generation, but they're supposed to elect people like it is in the United States. The Senate was horrified. They wanted to choose the next leader of Rome. They didn't want another Caesar on the throne, and they didn't want kings of Rome to keep passing on their power to their sons. Can't blame them on that one. That's not what it's supposed to be. "We have to get rid of Caesar once and for all," said one senator named Brutus. We know that's not going to end well. He had been a friend of Caesar's, but now he too was worried about Caesar's power in Rome. Tomorrow is the 15th of March, also known the Ides of March. We'll attack him as he enters the Senate and stab him to death. Now, other senators agreed, and the plans were made. Caesar was doomed. His friend Brutus, all of these senators disagreed with him, but their way of going about it is to kill him? Wow. Now, Caesar didn't know anything about the plot to kill him, but a Roman writer named Suetonius tells us that many strange things happened to Caesar leading up to that day. He went out to visit his favorite herd of horses. and found that the horses weren't eating. Instead, they were crying, and no horses could cry. This made Caesar so nervous that he went to the temple to ask the gods why his horses were so sad. But while he was in the temple, a fortune teller came up to him and whispered, "Caesar, Caesar, beware the Ides of March, or the 15th of March." When he got home, Caesar told his wife all about the strange things that had happened that day. This is not Cleopatra, by the way. During the night, she had a terrifying dream. She dreamed that she was holding her husband in her arms and that he had been stabbed to death. She cried out, "Caesar, Caesar," and woke up. She sat straight up in bed and the door of their room flew open all by itself. Oh, creepy. Now, when Caesar got up the next morning, his wife pleaded with him, "Don't go to the Senate today. It's the 15th of March. Just stay home where it's safe." "Now, nonsense," Caesar said. "Nothing will happen to me." He dressed and headed for the Senate building. He walked up the smooth marble steps. The sun shone on the white stone, and the sky was blue and peaceful overhead. "How silly of me to be nervous," he thought. "Nothing could go wrong today." He went into the room where the Senate met and sat down in his special chair. "Caesar," said one of the senators, "today I want to ask you to bring my brother back to Rome. He was banished several years ago." "Let's talk about that later," Caesar said, still thinking about his wife's dream. He knows the Ides of March. He knows he was stabbed in that dream. The senator leapt to his feet. "Friends," he shouted, "what are we waiting for?" He ran forward and grabbed Caesar by his purple robe. Brutus and the two other senators leaped at him with knives drawn. Caesar fought back, but they stabbed him. He staggered. He fell down at the feet of a statue of Pompey. When he looked up, he could hardly believe that his old friend, Brutus, had helped plot against him. "Et tu, Brute," he gasped, which is a Latin phrase that means, "You too, Brutus? You betrayed me?" And then Caesar died. There on the marble floor of the Senate building, his slaves came and carried his body home. Caesar, the greatest Roman, had been killed by his own friends and countrymen. When you're a little older, you can read the William Shakespeare story about Julius Caesar, which is fictionalized. Some of this is true. Some of this we don't quite know, but it makes for a wonderful story. So that is the end. I'd love for you to write some observations that you made that were differences from the history book, from compared to this story of the world, telling of Julius Caesar's ending of his life. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.